The massive warship blocked out the sun as it descended through the clouds over Nevada. It was black and shaped like a blade, stretching nearly 3 miles from end to end. Smaller ships followed behind it like baby ducks following their mother. But these were not baby ducks. These were killing machines that had destroyed entire civilizations. The Valkyrie Empire had arrived on Earth. Commander Dexul stood at the bridge of his flagship and watched the brown desert grow larger through the viewing screen. His compound eyes could see in 17 different spectrums of light. His armored body had survived plasma burns, blade strikes, and the vacuum of space. In 40 years of military service, he had conquered 11 planets and had never known defeat. Earth would be number 12. The humans had detected their fleet 3 days ago. They had sent radio signals asking for peace. They had begged for communication. Dexul found this amusing. Every species begged at the beginning. They would learn soon enough that the Valkyrie did not negotiate. They demanded. They took. They ruled. Still, protocol required a formal meeting before subjugation. The Galactic Council had rules about these things. So Dexul agreed to meet with the human leaders in a tent in the middle of the desert. He brought 50 of his best warriors with him. Each one stood 7 feet tall with black chitin armor that covered their insect-like bodies. Each one carried plasma rifles that could burn through steel. They marched in perfect formation across the sand toward the small white tent where the humans waited. General Marcus Webb watched them approach from inside the tent. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen 2 wars. Beside him stood Lieutenant David Park, a young officer with a sharp mind and steady hands. On his other side sat Tommy Kim, a 45-year-old former professor who had been pulled from his quiet life to serve as a translator. Tommy was nervous. His hands were sweating. 3 weeks ago, he had been grading student papers at a community college in California. Now he was about to meet aliens who wanted to enslave humanity. "Stay calm," General Webb said quietly. "Just translate what they say. Nothing more." The tent flap opened and Dexul entered. He had to duck to fit through the opening. Up close, he was terrifying. His head was triangular like a praying mantis, with mandibles that clicked when he breathed. His eyes were large and dark and showed no emotion. "I am Commander Dexul of the Valkyrie Empire," the alien said. A small device on his chest translated his clicks and buzzes into English. "You have been selected for integration into our empire. This is not a request. This is a notification." General Webb remained calm. "I'm General Marcus Webb, representing Earth's Unified Defense Council. We would prefer to discuss terms of peaceful coexistence." Dexul made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peaceful coexistence? Your species has no value to offer. You have no advanced technology. Your military forces are primitive. Your weapons are toys. What could you possibly offer the Valkyrie Empire?" "We offer resistance," the general said simply. The alien commander leaned forward. His mandibles spread wide in what Tommy realized was a smile. "Resistance? We have crushed 17 civilizations more advanced than yours. Your planet has no orbital defenses. Your largest warship could fit inside my cargo bay. Your soldiers use chemical propellant weapons like barbarians. You have nothing." General Webb did not blink. "We have people." "People?" Dexul waved one of his 4 arms dismissively. 8 billion soft creatures with no natural armor, no claws, no venom. You are prey animals. Nothing more. Tommy translated everything, keeping his voice steady even though his heart was racing. He noticed General Webb's fingers tap the table 3 times. He did not know what it meant, but Lieutenant Park seemed to understand. Outside the tent, hidden in the brown hills nearly 2 miles away, a woman named Grace Lee lay flat on her stomach behind a large rock. She was 41 years old, with black hair tied back in a ponytail. 6 months ago, she had owned a small gun shop in Montana, where she sold rifles and taught shooting classes on weekends. Now she wore military camouflage and held a rifle that could reach out and touch someone from 3,000 meters away. She was not a soldier. She had never served in the military. She was just a woman who had been shooting since she was 8 years old and had won 16 regional competitions. Through her scope, she could see the tent clearly. She could see the alien guards standing around it. She could count the scales on their armor. "I have eyes on the target," she whispered into her radio. "Commander is in the tent. Clear shot if needed." General Webb's voice came through her earpiece. "Hold position. Do not engage unless ordered." "Copy that," Grace said. She adjusted her breathing and kept watching. Back in the tent, Dexul was growing impatient. The human general was not showing the proper fear. He was not begging or crying or offering tribute. He simply sat there with calm eyes, like he was waiting for something. "Your resistance is meaningless," Dexul said. "In 3 days, we will begin the occupation. Your military bases will be destroyed. Your governments will surrender. Your people will serve the Empire. This is the natural order." General Webb nodded slowly. 3 days. That's very generous of you. It is not generosity. It is efficiency. We need time to position our ground forces. Of course. The general stood up and extended his hand. Dexul looked at it with confusion. "It's a handshake," Tommy explained quickly. "A human greeting. A sign of agreement to talk further." Dexul did not take the hand. "We will speak again when your leaders are ready to formally surrender. Do not waste my time with false hope." The alien commander turned and walked out of the tent. His guards followed in perfect formation. Their ships lifted off 20 minutes later, returning to the massive warship that still hung in the sky like a dark cloud. General Webb watched them go. Then he turned to Lieutenant Park and smiled. 3 days, he said. "That's more than enough time." Park nodded. "The civilian network is already in position. 12,000 volunteers across the western states alone. More signing up every hour." Tommy looked confused. "Civilian network? What civilian network?" The general put a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "Professor Kim, you're about to learn something about your fellow Americans. We have a very particular set of skills. Skills we acquired over a very long history. Skills that make us a nightmare for people like Dexul." In the hills, Grace Lee packed up her rifle and began the long walk back to base. She had a feeling she would need to clean her weapon tonight. Something told her she would be using it very soon. Above them all, the Valkyrie warship floated silently, its commander confident that Earth would fall like all the others. He had no idea what was coming. 2 days passed slowly. The Valkyrie warship remained in the sky, visible from 3 states. People looked up at it with fear. News channels talked about nothing else. Governments held emergency meetings. Churches filled with people praying for salvation. But in quiet places across America, something else was happening. In basements and garages and shooting ranges, ordinary people were preparing for war. Dexul requested another meeting on the morning of the 3rd day. He wanted to see the formal surrender. He wanted cameras present so his victory could be broadcast across the empire. He wanted to humiliate the humans before enslaving them. General Webb agreed to meet him. This time, the meeting was held at an abandoned airfield outside Las Vegas. The concrete was cracked and weeds grew the gaps. Hot wind blew dust across the runway. It was not a place that looked important. That was exactly why Webb had chosen it. Dexul arrived with 100 guards this time. Twice as many as before. He wanted to show strength. He wanted the humans to feel small and weak. General Webb stood waiting with Lieutenant Park and Tommy. "Kim, Behind them stood 20 American soldiers in full combat gear. They looked tiny compared to the alien warriors. "I hope you have come to surrender," Vexul said as he approached. "My patience grows thin." "We have come to talk," General Webb replied. "And perhaps to show you something." The alien commander's mandibles clicked with annoyance. "Show me what? More of your primitive weapons? More of your soft soldiers?" "Actually, yes." The general gestured toward Tommy Kim. "This man, for example." Vexul looked at Tommy with all four of his eyes. Tommy felt his stomach drop. He had not expected to become part of the demonstration. "This creature?" Vexul made the laughing sound again. "He's not even a soldier. He is soft and slow. What could he possibly demonstrate?" "Tommy," General Webb said calmly, "you mentioned that you hunt deer in the fall." Tommy swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. Since I was 12. My grandfather taught me. How far is your longest shot?" Tommy thought about it. "Maybe 600 meters. In the mountains. Thin air makes it tricky." Vexul waved his arm. 600 meters? My warriors can hit targets at 800 meters after years of training. Your deer hunter is not impressive. General Webb smiled. He's not our best. He's not even close to our best. He's just a professor who hunts on weekends. He turned and pointed toward the horizon. Do you see that drone out there? Everyone looked. Far away, a small black disc floated in the air. It was about the size of a dinner plate. It was so far away that Vexul had to use his enhanced vision to see it clearly. That drone is 2 kilometers away, the general said. One of Vexul's officers checked his scanner. 2.3 kilometers, Commander. Beyond effective range of any projectile weapon. A soldier brought forward a rifle and handed it to Tommy. It was a hunting rifle, not a military weapon. Wood stock, simple scope, nothing fancy. Tommy had used similar rifles his whole life. Tommy, General Webb said, would you mind showing our guest what a weekend hunter can do? Tommy's hands were shaking slightly as he took the rifle. 2 kilometers. He had never shot that far before. But he understood what was happening. This was bigger than him. This was about showing these aliens that humans were not helpless prey. He lay down on the concrete, positioning the rifle carefully. He looked through the scope and found the drone. It was a tiny dot, dancing slightly in the wind. He would need to account for bullet drop, wind speed, the curve of the earth, and a dozen other factors. He took a deep breath. He remembered his grandfather's voice from 30 years ago. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Trust the rifle. Trust yourself. He exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. The sound echoed across the empty airfield. 2 kilometers away, the drone exploded. Silence followed. Vexul's guards shifted nervously. The alien commander stared at the distant cloud of smoke and debris with all 4 eyes wide. That is impossible, he said quietly. A chemical propellant weapon cannot achieve that accuracy at that range. It is physically impossible. Lieutenant Park held up a bullet, identical to the one Tommy had just fired. Standard round, Commander. No guidance system. No computer assistance. Just a man and a rifle. Vexul turned to look at Tommy, who was getting back to his feet. The professor's hands had stopped shaking. In fact, he looked almost calm now. This man is not special, General Webb said. He is not a soldier. He is not a trained sniper. He's a college professor who shoots deer for fun. And he just hit a target that your warriors could not hit with years of training. The alien commander was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice harder than before. One shot proves nothing. Luck exists in all species. Fair enough. General Webb raised his hand and made a gesture dot from the hills around the airfield. 12 red laser dots appeared on the ground in front of Dexul. 12 dots spread across 100 meters. Each dot came from a different direction. "Those are 12 of our civilian volunteers," the general said. "Hunters, sport shooters, hobbyists. None of them are military. All of them have your guards targeted right now from distances between 1 and 3 kilometers." Dexul's guards raised their weapons, looking around frantically. They could not see the shooters. They could only see the red dots, proving that death could come at any moment. "Your warriors have excellent armor," General Webb continued. "But I'm told that the gaps between your chest plates are about 2 centimeters wide. My people are very good at hitting 2-centimeter targets." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Commander Dexul felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt afraid. "This is a threat?" he asked. "No," General Webb said. "This is a demonstration. You asked to see our elite warriors, our best snipers. But here's the thing, Commander. We don't have elite warriors. We don't have a special sniper course. We have 300 million people who think shooting is fun. We turn it into competitions. We give prizes for accuracy. We teach our children to shoot before they can drive." The general stepped closer to Dexul, showing no fear despite the alien's size and strength. "You can bomb our cities from orbit. You can destroy our military bases. But for every soldier you kill, there are 1,000 civilians who can shoot just as well. Maybe better. And they will never stop fighting. Because this is their home. And they really, really like their guns." Dexul stood completely still. The red dots remained steady on the ground. His guards were frozen, afraid to move. "I think," the general said quietly, "you should go back to your ship and think very carefully about what happens next. Because I promise you, Commander, if your troops set foot on American soil, they will face an enemy unlike anything your empire has ever encountered. Not an army, a nation. And every single one of them knows how to shoot." The alien commander said nothing. He turned and walked back to his shuttle. His guards followed quickly, relief visible in their movements thawed as the shuttle lifted off. Tommy let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "Did that really just happen?" he asked. Lieutenant Park grinned. "Welcome to the Resistance, Professor." In the hills, Grace Lee lowered her rifle and smiled. The demonstration had worked. But she knew the real fight was still coming. The Valkyrie would not be scared away by laser dots and long shots. They would come back. And when they did, she would be ready. That night, Commander Dexul could not sleep. He stood alone in his command center, staring at data screens filled with information about Earth. Before today, he had not bothered to study the humans. Why would he? They were primitive. They were weak. They were just another species waiting to be conquered. Now, he was reading everything his intelligence officers could find. The numbers did not make sense. "Commander," his chief intelligence officer said, entering the room with a tablet, "I have completed the analysis you requested." "Tell me," Dexul said. The officer hesitated. This was not going to be a pleasant report. The humans have a tradition called hunting. Civilians travel into wilderness areas to track and kill native animals using projectile weapons. Hunting? For food? Sometimes. But often just for sport. For enjoyment. The officer paused. In the region called North America alone, there are approximately 32 million registered hunters. Dexul turned slowly. 32 million? Yes, Commander. And that number only includes those who have registered with their government. The actual number is likely higher. The officer scrolled through his data. They also have competitive shooting events. Civilians gather to fire weapons at targets for prizes and entertainment. Some competitions require hitting targets at 2,000 meters with projectile weapons. using no electronic assistance. The commander was silent. In the Velthari Empire, marksmanship was a military skill. It took years of training to produce a competent sniper. The idea that civilians would practice such skills for fun was difficult to process. There is more, the officer continued. Many humans begin training with weapons in childhood. It is considered a family tradition in many regions. Fathers teach sons. Mothers teach daughters. Grandparents teach grandchildren. Children? They arm their children? Yes, Commander. Some begin shooting as young as 5 or 6 years old. By the time they reach adulthood, many have been practicing for 15 years or more. Lashul walked to the window and looked down at Earth. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from up here. It looked harmless. But those numbers changed everything. 30-2 million hunters in one region alone. Millions more sport shooters. Countless others who kept weapons in their homes for protection. All of them trained. All of them capable of killing from distances that would challenge Velthari military marksmen on the surface below. In a small town in Texas, a 72-year-old woman named Betty Cole was sitting on her back porch cleaning a rifle. The television inside was showing news about the alien invasion. Her granddaughter, a 19-year-old college student named Amy, sat beside her. "Grandma," Amy said, "are you scared?" Betty laughed softly. "Honey, I've been shooting since before your mother was born. Won the national championship in '87. If those bug creatures want to come down here, they're welcome to try." She held up the rifle, checking the barrel for dust. "This belonged to your great-grandfather. He carried it in Korea. It's old, but it still shoots straight. And so do I." Amy had grown up watching her grandmother shoot. Betty could hit a target the size of a quarter from 300 meters. She had taught Amy everything she knew. Now Amy could do the same. They were not soldiers. They were not special forces. They were a grandmother and a granddaughter who happened to be very good at putting bullets exactly where they wanted them. In Alaska, a fishing boat captain named James Wright was teaching his crew how to shoot moving targets. They used floating debris in the water, bottles, and pieces of wood that bobbed in the waves. "Lead the target," James said, demonstrating. "Calculate the speed. Account for the wind. Then squeeze, don't pull." He fired. A bottle exploded 200 meters away. His crew cheered. They had been practicing every day since the aliens arrived. Most of them had never held a rifle before 2 weeks ago. Now they were hitting targets that professional soldiers would struggle with. Humans learned fast, especially when their survival depended on it. In Kentucky, a teenage girl named Susan Baker was practicing in her family's barn. She had set up targets at the far end of the property, nearly 400 meters away. Each target had a small red dot in the center. Each dot was about the size of a coin. Susan had been shooting since she was 8. Her father had taught her, and his father had taught him. It was a tradition in their family going back 5 generations. In all that time, the Bakers had produced dozens of excellent shooters. Susan was the best of them all. She raised her rifle, took a breath, and fired 5 shots in quick succession. Then she walked to check her targets. All 5 bullets had gone through the same hole. "Not bad," her father said from behind her. "But you're pulling slightly to the left. Let's work on that." Back on the Velthari warship, Commander Thexul was making a decision. The demonstration had shaken him, but he was a warrior. He had conquered planets that fought back. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed resistance movements. He would not be intimidated by a species that played with weapons for entertainment. "Prepare the ground forces," he ordered. "We land at dawn." His officer looked worried. "Commander, the intelligence suggests caution. These humans are more dangerous than we anticipated." "They are still primitive," Thexul said firmly. They have no orbital defense. They have no energy weapons. They have only their projectile guns and their stubborn pride. We will crush them with superior technology and superior numbers. How many troops should we deploy? Dexul considered. 5,000. That should be enough to establish control of the western region. Once the humans see our strength, their will to fight will collapse. It always does. The officer nodded and left to give the orders. Dexul returned to his window. He watched the earth turning slowly below him. He thought about the professor who had hit a target at 2 kilometers. He thought about the laser dots that had appeared from nowhere. He thought about 32 million hunters. For a moment, just a brief moment, doubt crept into his mind. Then he pushed it away. The Valkyrie had conquered 17 star systems. They had never lost. They would not start losing now. On Earth, General Webb received word that the invasion would begin at dawn. He gathered his officers and civilian coordinators for a final briefing. "They're coming," he said. 5,000 troops landing in Nevada and Arizona. They think it will be an easy victory. They think we'll surrender once we see their strength. He looked around the room at the faces of soldiers and civilians alike. Farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who had volunteered to fight. Hunters and sport shooters who had trained their whole lives for a moment they never expected. "Show them what Americans are made of," General Webb said. "Show them that this is not a planet of sheep. This is a planet of wolves who have been pretending to be sheep. And now the wolves are hungry." The room cheered. Outside, the sun was setting. In a few hours, the invasion would begin. Grace Lee checked her rifle one last time. She had 200 rounds of ammunition and a perfect position in the hills. She could see the landing zone where the alien ships would arrive. She thought about her life before all this. Her little gun shop. Her weekend classes. The simple joy of a perfect shot. Now that joy had a purpose. Now those skills would save her world. She settled into position and waited for dawn. The invasion began at sunrise. 50 transport ships dropped from the Valkyrie warship like seeds falling from a tree. They screamed through the atmosphere, leaving trails of fire across the orange sky. Each ship carried 100 Valkyrie warriors in full combat armor. 5,000 soldiers ready to conquer. They landed in the Nevada desert first. The ships touched down on the sand and their doors opened with a hiss of hydraulics. The warriors poured out in perfect formation, weapons raised, ready for battle. They found nothing but empty desert. Commander Dexul watched from his command center in orbit. "Where are the defenders?" he demanded. "Where is their military?" His tactical officer checked the sensors. No large concentrations of human forces detected, Commander. Some small heat signatures in the surrounding hills. Perhaps scouts. They've retreated, Dexul decided. As expected. The demonstration was just theater. When faced with real force, they run like the prey they are. He was wrong. In the hills surrounding the landing zone, 300 civilian shooters lay hidden in the rocks and scrub brush. They had arrived during the night, moving silently in the darkness. They wore no uniforms. They carried no military equipment. They were hunters and farmers and teachers who had answered the call. Grace Lee was among them. She lay flat behind a boulder, her rifle pointed at the alien formation below. Through her scope, she could see every detail of their armor. She could see the gaps between the plates. She could see the soft spots where their necks met their shoulders. "All units, hold fire," came General Webb's voice through her earpiece. "Let them move inland. Draw them into the kill zone." Grace watched as the alien troops began marching east. They moved confidently, unaware that death was watching from every direction. The Valkyrie advanced 3 kilometers. Before they reached the town of Miller's Creek, it was a small place. Population 3,000, with a main street that had a gas station, a grocery store, and a church with a white steeple. The townspeople had evacuated days ago. Only volunteers remained. The alien commander on the ground, an officer named Trex Volume, ordered his troops to spread out through the town. "Search every building," he commanded. "Find any humans hiding here. This will be our forward base." 20 warriors entered the grocery store. Inside, it was dark and quiet. Shelves of canned food and bags of chips lined the aisles. It looked abandoned. Then the shooting started. From a rooftop across the street, a retired mechanic named Robert Park opened fire with a hunting rifle. His first shot hit a Velthari warrior in the gap between his helmet and chestplate. The alien fell without a sound. His second shot hit another warrior in the same spot out by the time the Velthari realized they were under attack. Robert had killed 4 of them. The aliens returned fire, spraying the rooftop with plasma blasts. Robert had already moved. He was running across the rooftops, firing from different positions, never staying still long enough to be targeted. On the other side of town, Betty Cole was setting up her position in the church steeple. Her granddaughter Amy was beside her, spotting targets through binoculars. 4 hostiles moving north on Main Street. Amy reported. Betty adjusted her aim. "I see them." She fired 4 times. 4 aliens dropped. The Velthari were panicking now. They could not see their attackers. They could not predict where the next shot would come from. Their advanced sensors detected nothing because the humans were using chemical weapons that produced minimal heat signatures. Their armor, which had protected them on a dozen worlds, had gaps that human bullets found with terrible precision. Officer Trex Volume screamed into his communicator. "We are under attack. Heavy casualties. Requesting reinforcements." Commander Dexul heard the panic in his officer's voice. "How many defenders do you face?" "Unknown. They are everywhere. They are invisible." In orbit, Dexul checked his tactical display. The sensors showed only scattered heat signatures, nothing that looked like a military force. Yet his troops were dying at an alarming rate. "Send the second wave," he ordered. 1,000 additional troops. Crush this resistance. The second wave landed 20 minutes later. They joined the survivors of the first wave and pushed deeper into the town. More aliens fell to unseen shooters. Every window, every rooftop, every shadow seemed to hide a killer. Grace Lee had moved from the hills to a position inside an old barn on the edge of town. She had a clear view of the main road. As alien reinforcements moved past her position, she began firing. Her first 30 shots killed 30 aliens. She was not missing. She had not missed a shot since she was 15 years old. When she ran out of military ammunition, she switched to her personal hunting rifle. The bullets were smaller, but just as deadly. She kept firing. Tommy Kim had been given a command role. He sat in a bunker 3 miles from the fighting, coordinating the civilian defenders through a radio network. "Betty, you've got a group of 8 moving toward the church," he said. "Coming from the south." Betty's voice came back calm and steady. "I see them, dear." "Amy, count me down." 800 meters, Amy said. Slight wind from the west. Maybe 5 miles per hour. Betty adjusted her scope. "Thank you, sweetheart." She fired 8 times. 8 aliens fell by noon. The Velthari had lost over 2,000 warriors. They had not killed a single human. They had not even seen a single human. They were fighting ghosts. Officer Trex Volume tried to retreat. He gathered his surviving troops and ordered them back to the landing ships. But the route was blocked. Civilian shooters had positioned themselves along every escape path. Every road, every open field, every piece of cover had someone watching it. The aliens ran. The humans shot them as they ran in the hills. Grace finally saw an alien up close. A wounded warrior had crawled behind a rock, trying to hide. He was young by Velthari standards, barely more than a recruit. His black eyes looked up at her with something like terror. Grace hesitated. She thought about all the news reports she had seen, all the stories of what the Velthari had done to other planets, the cities they had burned, the people they had enslaved. She raised her rifle. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "but you should not have come here." She fired. By evening, the invasion force had been destroyed. Of the 5,000 warriors who had landed that morning, fewer than 200 survived. They were surrounded, out of ammunition, and begging for rescue. Commander Dexol received the final reports in shocked silence. 5,000 of his best troops, gone, killed by civilians with primitive weapons. "This is impossible," he said. "This cannot be real." His intelligence officer stood beside him, equally stunned. "Commander, our analysis was wrong. We underestimated them. We underestimated them badly." Dexul stared at the planet below. That peaceful blue and green sphere had just swallowed 5,000 of his warriors. And it was still hungry. On the ground, the defenders gathered in the ruins of Miller's Creek. They were tired and dirty, and many were crying. Not from sadness, but from relief. They had done the impossible. They had beaten an alien invasion. General Webb walked among them, shaking hands and offering thanks. He found Grace lay sitting on a pile of rubble, her rifle across her knees. "Hell of a day," he said. Grace nodded. "Never thought I'd use my skills for something like this." "How many?" She thought about it. 43 confirmed. "Maybe more." The general whistled softly. 43 kills in one day. From a woman who had spent her life running a gun shop in Montana. "There are thousands more like you out there," Webb said. "Maybe millions. And they're all ready to fight." Grace looked up at the sky where the alien warship still floated, dark against the stars. "Then let them come," she said. "We'll be waiting." 2 weeks had passed since the first invasion. 2 weeks of fighting that had changed everything. Commander Dexul had sent 3 more waves of troops. Each wave had been destroyed. Each battle had cost him thousands of warriors. His elite soldiers, veterans of a dozen conquests, were being killed by humans who had never worn a uniform. The news spread across the galaxy. The Velthari Empire, undefeated for 3 centuries, was losing to a primitive planet. Other species began to watch. Some with hope, some with fear, all with fascination. The humans fought differently than any enemy the Velthari had faced before. There were no front lines. There were no military bases to bomb. The defenders were everywhere and nowhere. A farmer would wake up in the morning, milk his cows, and spend the afternoon shooting aliens from his barn. A teenager would go to school online, eat lunch, and then join a sniper team in the hills. A grandmother would bake cookies for her grandchildren and then pick off enemy scouts from her kitchen window. They were not soldiers. They were something worse. They were a nation of killers who had been practicing their craft for generations. Dexul tried orbital bombardment. He destroyed cities and military bases and anything that looked important. But for every building he flattened, 10 more shooters appeared in the wilderness. The humans had spread out, disappearing into the mountains and forests and deserts where sensors could not find them. He tried negotiation. The humans refused. They demanded complete withdrawal. They demanded the Velthari leave their star system and never return. They were not asking any more. They were telling. Now Dexul sat in a cell on Earth, a prisoner of the species he had planned to enslave. General Webb entered the cell and sat down across from him. The alien commander looked smaller somehow. His chitin armor had been removed. His 4 eyes were dull with defeat. "I don't understand," Dexul said. His voice was quiet, broken. "Your military was small. Your technology was primitive. How did you beat us?" The general leaned back in his chair. Let me explain something about humans, Commander. We don't have a warrior caste. We don't have a military species. Every single one of us is a potential soldier. Every farmer, every teacher, every grandmother. Daxul shook his head. But why? Why would civilians train for war? We didn't train for war, Webb said. We trained for fun. Our ancestors hunted to survive. When we didn't need to hunt anymore, we kept doing it because we enjoyed it. We turned killing into a sport, a hobby, a family tradition. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a group of young people were practicing on a shooting range. Teenagers and college students learning to hit targets that their grandfathers would have been proud of. You asked to see our sniper, Webb continued. You assumed we would have one. Maybe a few. Maybe an elite corps of specialists. He turned back to face the alien. We have 300 million. Daxul was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been haunting him since the invasion began. The professor, the translator who hit the drone at 2 kilometers. He really was not a trained soldier? Tommy Kim? Webb smiled. He's back at his college now, teaching history. He shoots deer on weekends because his grandfather taught him to love the sport. The alien commander made a sound that might have been a laugh. We never had a chance, did we? No, Webb said honestly. You didn't. 6 months later, a Velthari delegation arrived on Earth. Not for war this time. For real negotiation. The Empire had seen what happened to their invasion force. They had watched the footage of their warriors being destroyed by invisible enemies. They had calculated the cost of trying again and decided it was too high. The new ambassador, a female named Derexel, met with the human diplomatic team in a conference room in New York City. The new human ambassador was a woman named Rachel Brown. Before the invasion, she had been a competitive shooter who had won 3 Olympic gold medals. Now she represented her planet. Your species is unlike anything we have encountered, Derexel said carefully. Our empire has conquered many worlds. Some fought back. Some had advanced technology. Some had large armies. But none had what you have. And what's that? Rachel asked. Universal lethality, the alien said. Every one of your citizens is capable of killing at extreme distances. Your young learn marksmanship before they learn to drive vehicles. Your elderly remain dangerous until their final days. You have no non-combatants. Rachel nodded. We had 2 world wars, a lot of open land, and a constitutional right to own weapons. Over time, shooting became part of our culture. Part of our identity? But why? Derexel asked. Why would a species cultivate such skills if not for war? Rachel thought about it for a moment. She thought about her grandfather teaching her to shoot on his farm in Nebraska. She thought about the joy of a perfect shot, the satisfaction of skill honed over years of practice. She thought about all the millions of Americans who felt the same way. Because it's fun, she said simply. We just think it's fun. The alien diplomat made a note on her tablet. She wrote, Do not invade Earth. Ever. The inhabitants consider killing to be entertainment. The word spread across the galaxy. The Velthari Empire formally withdrew from human space and declared Earth a protected world. Not out of kindness. Out of fear. Other empires took notice. The humans were added to a very short list of species that should never be attacked. They joined the ranks of civilizations so dangerous that even the most aggressive conquerors left them alone. In her small town in Montana, Grace Lee reopened her gun shop. Business was good. Everyone wanted to learn to shoot now. Everyone wanted to be ready if the aliens ever came back. She taught classes every weekend. Children as young as 8 and adults as old as 80. They all learned the same lessons. Breathe, slowly. Squeeze, don't pull. Trust your aim. One day, a young boy asked her what it was like to fight in the invasion. Grace thought about it for a long time before answering. It was scary, she admitted, but it was also the most important thing I've ever done. I wasn't fighting for medals or money. I was fighting for my home, for my neighbors, for everyone who couldn't fight for themselves. She picked up her rifle and showed the boy how to hold it properly. We won because we were ready, she said. Because our grandparents taught our parents, and our parents taught us, and now we teach our children. The skill passes down through generations. It's in our blood. The boy looked up at her with wide eyes. Will the aliens ever come back? Grace smiled and looked out the window at the blue sky. Somewhere up there, alien empires were making very sure to stay away from the little planet called Earth. Maybe, she said. But if they do, we'll be waiting. And we never miss. High above the planet, ships from a dozen different civilizations passed through the solar system on their way to other destinations. None of them stopped at Earth. None of them even considered it. The humans had earned their place in the galaxy. Not through diplomacy or technology or wealth. Through something much simpler. They had earned it through 300 million people who thought that killing was fun. And across the stars, the message was clear. Earth was not a planet of sheep. It was a planet of wolves. And the wolves were always hungry. The end.